Tell us about the book and then how it transitioned into the movie and how it was getting that call that it was finally going to be the movie.
You got it. Thank you. Anyway, I'm sitting I guess at home, and I get a call, and I'm told to hold for a woman named Jennifer Scanlon. I have no idea who she is. She gets on the phone and wants to know if the rights to this biography of Frank Sheeran. It's what it is. It's a biography. And if they're available. She's calling from Tribeca Pictures. And I said, yeah, they're available. And there was an option holder that had bought an option from me. And I turned her over to him. And they began to negotiate to buy the rights. And Paramount actually buys the rights. And then one day in July, I get a phone call, could you hold for Bob De Niro, please? And Bob gets on the phone and says, you know, I really like your book. Do you have more? More anecdotes, more stories besides what's in the book? I said, I have a ton of them. And that's why the book has a 57-page addition to it. I have a ton of them. I said that I can now tell because people like Russell Buffalino have died. Billy D'Elia has turned state's evidence. Joey the Clown Lombardo in Chicago, who used to call Frank regularly while I'm sitting there, the Boston, Chicago office. He's in jail, and so many others. Tony Giacalone was dead. The Detroit mobster are gone. So now I could tell stories that I couldn't tell before. And they're all on tape. You know, I taped Frank. I had him to myself for 5 years. And anyway, so I give them to him, and he's really enjoying them. And then he says to me, how old are you? And I said, how old am I? He says, yeah, how old are you? I said, what are you, the FBI? And he burst out laughing. And he said, can you come, it was a Tuesday, can you come to New York on Thursday? I'm leaving for Ireland on Friday. And I'd like to meet with you and go over some of this material with you in New York. And I said, well, no. How about you're going to Ireland? How about if I send you some tape recordings? Come on in. How about if I send you, did you find the dog? Yeah. Yay! Your seats are still here.
Come on, your seats are here.
Come on in. So
this is Robert May, folks.
This is the initial call from De Niro. So I said, how about if I send you 2 articles I wrote for Playboy, I send you some tapes, I send you some other material, and you read it on the flight to Ireland, and when you get back, we have a meeting. So Lisa and I were discussing today that that's probably the only time anybody ever turned down a meeting with Bob De Niro. So then he goes to Ireland, and then in August, a month later, I get a call from a guy at Paramount. Paramount had bought the rights in the meantime. From a guy at Paramount, they want to fly me to New York and meet with De Niro, Scorsese, and the screenwriter Steve Zaillian, who won an Oscar for Schindler's List, at the Parker Meridien Hotel in Manhattan. We're going to meet for an hour at 5:30, and that's the only time that he could get, that Paramount guy could schedule these people at the same time. So would they fly me to New York? They want to fly me to New York for this. And I said, well, look, I live in Idaho, and they don't deliver mail out here. You got to go to the post office and get it. So I'm pretty busy right now. No, only kidding. Busted. Psych. So they fly me to New York and put me in a hotel, and I end up at the Parker Meridien in a room with just me. Sitting next to me is Scorsese on a perpendicular. Next to him is Steve Zaillian, and right over here is Bob De Niro. And I said, okay, now the interrogator gets interrogated. Fire away, man. And they start questioning me. The prime mover was De Niro. You could tell, because every once in a while, he'd give Steve Zaillian a bop. Did you get that? Did you get it? Zaillian's taking notes of things I'm saying. Did you get that? Did you get that? I got it. I got it. So they're wearing me out there. And as Wendy noted, I can chat. I can talk. I'm Italian. What can I say? So they had nothing to eat there. They had some Pepperidge Farm cookies and coffee. And so this meeting that was supposed to last an hour, they had their own script already written. Zaillian was making notes on the script. Bob was making notes on his copy of the script. And finally, I said, guys, I got to go to the bathroom, which was how we began this story about me going to the bathroom in Springfield, Pennsylvania. I got to go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, and I look at my timepiece, and we've been at it for 4 hours, and no dinner. And I just flew in from Idaho. And I look in the mirror and I say, I hope this is over. And then another part of me said, no, you don't, you lying sack of crap. You hope there's more. And I walk in, and there could be no more. Those men looked as if somebody had thrown a hand grenade into a foxhole, and they were like this. They were spread out on their couches. Scorsese, who's a very fine gentleman, a raconteur, knows when to stop talking, unlike some people. And he was standing up, but the other two were done. And Scorsese says, you know, we got to take a break. And they all had dinner reservations with their kids, you know. They would pick up the phone and say, their cell phone, and say, it's going to be another little longer, you know, and then hang up. And Scorsese said, you know, we're going to stop now. And I said, look, will I ever get to see this script? And he said, yeah, it's due at Paramount on Labor Day, and I'll send it to you after that. And so I was very happy, and we leave. The four of us leave, and De Niro starts whispering in the ear of each of the other two men. And even though I couldn't hear him, I knew what he was saying. And what he was saying was, we're not ready to film this. They had been, but now they no longer were, because they had this tremendous amount of material that I had just 4 hours worth that I had just given them. And I never did get that script. I ended up getting, but anyway, we leave. The next morning I get a call from Jane Rosenthal, Bob De Niro's partner. Oh, I'm so sorry I missed the meeting yesterday. I heard it was fabulous. It was very productive. And who's your entertainment lawyer? So I hustled, got a hold of an entertainment lawyer. And what they wanted was all the things that I had said to them, and they were not in the book, and they wanted to be sure that I was signing them away, which I was happy to do. And I said to my cousin, who used to be in the picture, well, he still is, but he's more casually in the picture now, investing and doing what he does, but in the picture business. Anyway, I said to my cousin, I think I have screwed myself. They're ready to film this, and now they're not going to be. And my cousin Carmine said, "Cuz, you just made it a much better movie, so don't worry about that." Well, don't worry about that. That meeting was in 2009, and the next phone call I got was 8 years later. And during that time, I lost my place in the scheme of things. And Marty had other movies to make ahead of mine, like Wolf of Wall Street and Silence and Hugo. And I'm watching. There they go. Marty, remember me? Didn't we have a good time at the Parker Meridian? right down the street from Carnegie Hall. They're gone. And my nervous twitches got worse. It was really an ordeal. I was trying to write another book, and it was hard to focus on, wondering what's going on with these people. And then I read that, I would read that Leo DiCaprio just talked Marty into doing another movie. I forget the name of it. It was after The Wolf of Wall Street. Anxious for any little bit of news. 8 years later. In that original story that you'll have to read the book to hear, that Wendy appropriately stopped me on, that day that I had with Frank Sheeran at the Mona Lisa restaurant and all of that, that evolved into 8 years, because that was the last day he agreed to sit with me, because I got so much out of him, and it took him 8 years to come back to me. So here was another 8-year clip. Unbelievable. 2009, August 2009, at the Park Meridian. The next time I heard from any of those people or read about anything involving my project was March 13, 2017. I was sitting in a bookstore in my hometown of Sun Valley, Idaho, with my dear friend Cheryl, who owns it. And I'm about to go across the street and talk at a theater at the Sun Valley Film Festival, which is in March every year. And I said to Cheryl, they want me to talk about how you get your book adapted into a screenplay. I know nothing about that. You know, I wasn't a party to it. It all happened because somebody had given the book to Bob De Niro, not involved with me. And he fell in love with the book, and Zaillian fell in love with the book, and Marty fell in love with the book. I had nothing to do with it. And she said to me, oh, Charlie, just, you'll make them laugh. You'll think of something to say. And that was coming up in 15 minutes, and my phone rings. Hold for Bob De Niro, please. 8 years later. And he said, I just wanted to touch base with you. Those were his exact words. And I never realized, because I was in a coma most of the time, I never realized how funny that line was until you all just laughed at it. I realized it's true. I just wanted to touch base, and I want to know when you're going to be in New York next. When are you going to be in New York next? Well, the American Booksellers Association convention at the Javits Center is coming up in June, and I now had something to talk about at that talk I was giving, and everybody was thrilled for me. And so we made arrangements that when I'm in New York, I stay at my sister's apartment on 84th Street. My sister and her husband. I'm a New Yorker, and so we made arrangements to meet. I'm going to go to Tribeca and meet with Bob and Jane Rosenthal, his partner. I forget, like June 9th or something, 2017. And I get a phone call. I'm at my sister's apartment. And it's one of Marty's producers, Emma Tillinger. And I've never met her. And Emma says to me that Marty wants to be at the meeting that you're having with Bob. And so we're going to have to reschedule it to fit Marty's, whatever you call it, Marty's schedule. I said, okay. And we're sending over a script to wherever you're staying. And we're going to email you the script as well. And we'd like you to read it overnight and show up at 10 o'clock. It was another hotel, I forget the name, it was on Park Avenue, the Lorelei on Park Avenue. So that afternoon at 4 o'clock, they send over the script. And I'm a hard copy guy, old-fashioned, give me the pages. And what was unique about this particular script is that it was the first screenplay I'd ever read. And it was not easy, You're used to a certain format to read. So I read it, And there were a couple of things that I thought could use a little attention. And I can't talk about it because Marty told me that whatever goes on in this room, in this script meeting room, you can't ever talk about until the movie's in theaters. Because I change things, and I've been known to change in one movie all the voiceover in the movie until 2 weeks before the release of the movie. So whatever you hear in this room might change. So I get there, and he gives me that little talk, and they ask me if I have any notes. I didn't know what they meant. And I tell them, well, there's two things I want to talk about. And I talk about the first one, and he looks over at Zaillian, Steve Zaillian. Same group, by the way, the Not Whole Gang. And he looks over at Zaillian, and he tells Zaillian to change it the way I had said. It's history. What can I do? I can't, you know, this is the truth. I have them on tape. The FBI has my tapes. We have 23 instances of corroboration in the new edition of the book that prove it's the truth, what Frank confessed to me, because they want to tell you, child. And the next one that next topic I talk about, Marty didn't jump right on that one, but he gradually over that summer did jump on it to a certain extent. And it was more than satisfactory to me, the way he jumped on it. Jumped on it with dialogue that created a kind of flashback of what had happened rather than showing what had happened. And boy, I learned. It was like going to film school. Boy, I learned so much. They invited me back, and Bob said to me, you should write your notes. Write your notes on the script. You know, write on the script where you see something you want us to talk about. Okay. So for the next meeting, I did that. And Marty's gal Emma said, no, Marty wants them typed. And you know, and on email format, electronic format. So I spent that summer of 2017 in a hotel in Manhattan, the Ameritania, at 54th Street and Broadway, attending the occasional script meeting. It's not like I met in Marty's apartment every day, but regularly that whole summer. And in order to walk over to his apartment through Central Park, I would get out of my apartment, out of my building at 54th and Broadway, and look to my left, and about 5 blocks down 54th Street was an AT&T building, a white building with no windows. It had been built to house this new thing called computers, giant computers that were sensitive to the humidity. And I look at that, and I had worked on that building as a $65 a week timekeeper. And my job for the $65 a week was to walk out on the beams with 5 stories to my death on either side of me, walk out on the beams to check on the badge identification number of the worker to make sure that worker was actually on the job working and not off in the gin mill drinking. And they would never cooperate. You could call, hey, what's your badge number? They wouldn't look at you. So I had to learn, and here I was, and how did it happen? That I went from that 1960 as a daredevil on beams to this meeting that I'm about to have with, and boy, did I feel grateful. And I used a lot of Catholic stuff on Frank. I was raised Catholic. I used a lot of Catholic stuff on Frank to get the confessions out of him. He was full of remorse. You have to make up a new word for killing Hoffa besides remorse. And I used it to my advantage. And I know that the reason that things fell into place in my life, one after the other, was because my little Italian mother, who was 4'10", every night of my life said a rosary for me. And when I came to her with good news, Bob De Niro's office called. They want to know if the rights are available. She was living with me in Idaho then. My late mother died at 93 in Idaho. And she would say the same thing all the time. Look up, Charles. So I have to look up and thank God. And and along with that spiritual, we're done, right?
Pretty much, yes.
Pretty much. So I want to end with a little spiritual prayer that I learned about patience, because as you heard, I needed to have patience and more patience. And so the prayer goes like this: Dear God, please give me patience, but give it to me right now.
Charlie, we're going to open up to a few questions. I want to share my own Charlie story. This year's Academy Awards, there was a very incredible commercial that came on. Did anybody see it when it came through? And it was Robert De Niro, the conversation of
Al Pacino.
Al Pacino. Was that Al Pacino? I didn't know that was Al Pacino. How about that? And it was basically, I heard you paint houses. And Robert De Niro says, yes, I do. So I was screaming for my husband, oh my God, Charlie's quotate the title of his book. And I emailed Charlie and said, Charlie, just so you know, I was screaming last night when I saw that commercial during the Oscars. And he emailed me back and said, there was a lot of screaming out here too. It was so exciting. Do we have any quick questions? I know we went a little bit long, but I know we might have some questions out there in the audience. Anybody out there? Right here?
Is there going to be a theatrical release, or just tied to Netflix?
Theatrical release for the movie, The Irishman. I can tell you with what I've been researching with Netflix and the few interactions I've had with them, they're saying November. The rumor's been, and this has been reported in all the trade magazines, it's over budget. Of course, Martin Scorsese only does it right. But it looks like November it's coming out, and it's going to be a theatrical release. And Robert, maybe you know this too, you're the industry.
I know, but what I know that they're doing a qualifying run in New York and Los Angeles for sure, and probably other big cities as well to qualify for award season. And I mean, that's a good sign, because they don't do that unless they feel it has any potential.
Right.
I mean, that's all I know.
Right. So we're hoping by Christmas at least. A great holiday film.
I was told that I should say the fall. So the fall. By the head of publicity of Netflix.
Now, could you repeat the first half hour or so?
I'm telling the story. I don't care if you all walk out. Everything that I had, not everything, but a lot of it.
I was kidding about that.
A lot of the stuff that I had with Sheeran, I captured on tape either the moment he said it, or if he said it and I didn't have my tape recorder on, I would capture it afterwards and have him repeat it. And one of the things that he said was that after the disappearance of Hoffa, everybody's wondering where is he, and blah, blah. And a couple of days later, Russell Buffalino ordered Frank to call Josephine Hoffa and tell her that everything's going to be all right. Even though he knows it's a lie, he killed Hoffa. And he's going to offer his assistance. And Sheeran didn't want to do it. And Russell said, you got to do it. And it'll look guilty. You'll look guilty if you don't do it. And so I called her, and then he told me what he said. He said, you know, this Joe Bananas, the mafia gangster who had been kidnapped off the streets and held for like 6 months, resurfaced when the beef was squared that he had with the commission in New York. And so here's Frank saying, you know, that thing with Mr. Bonanno, same thing's going to happen with Jimmy. And she was crying, and I had to make that call. And then he said to me on the tape, what kind of man makes a call like that? And he was very concerned about his daughters reading some of this stuff. And when it came time for the book to be released, I had a paragraph in there about that. And I had forgotten that I took it out. But it was a story that I told all the time when I had more time. And it was a story I told all the time. And I had told it to Bob. And so Bob wanted that story, and he couldn't find it in the book. So I get a call. I forgot to tell you, they assigned a person to me, Mary Ann Bowers, who was Marty's researcher. And during the filming, I went back to Idaho for the filming, although I came back and went to the set. But during the filming, I was in Idaho, and Mary Ann would call me 2 or 3 times a day as in the nature of an advisor. What about this? What about that? They're shooting this scene now. They want to know this. They want to know that. And so I was on standby, many miles away. And that was for the entire film. So they call me, where is this paragraph, about call to Josephine? I said, it's in the book. I asked, and I couldn't find it. I asked my wife, it's in the book, and she couldn't find it. And my cousin, it's in the book. Everybody, and I said to Mary Ann, it's in the book, Mary Ann. She said, I can't find it. And then all of a sudden it hit me. I went and looked where it had been, that out of respect for Sheeran's daughters, I had in 2003, when I was preparing the book for publication in 2004, I had put it aside. And I called my publisher and said, there's room for it where I had it. Can we put it in? And he said, yes, let's put it back in. Moron for taking it out. And so I was able to give it to Mary Ann. Here it is. And they were able to use it. So when my wife and I finally did get to the set, we flew in for the wrap party, and we went to the set before the wrap party. And there was a guy we had become friends with. I forget what he was a member of the crew, and he said to me, boy, you just missed the best scene in the movie. Day before yesterday, they shot this phone call that Frank Sheeran had to make to Josephine Hoffa. And he really nailed it. It was incredible. Oh, well, I missed it, but, it was wonderful. And that doesn't mean it's going to be in the movie, just because they filmed that version of it. So my wife and I then are at the wrap party. Here's Bob De Niro and me and my wife here, and a character actor named Paulie Herman, who's just aces as a guy and as an actor. And he became a friend of mine years ago through my cousin, who I told you had been in the picture business, and Paulie standing there. And I said to Bob, Bob, I heard that the buzz, and other people were talking about it, this film, this scene. I said, the buzz is that you really nailed this phone call to Josephine Hoffa, that you captured every bit of the emotion and the shame that Frank Sheeran felt. And it was amazing. But Nancy and I didn't come to the set that day. So would you mind doing it again for us tomorrow night? He leaned over and planted a kiss on my cheek. And I had him laughing the rest of the time we were there for different ways, different things. And I said to my wife, when we walked away to mingle with some of the other people, I said to my wife, did you see? He kissed me like 5 times. And she said, it was 6, I counted. So, thanks for that.
Any other questions out there? We got one right here.
Yeah, I have a question. Why did they choose Rockland Orange and Bergen County to do the filming of that versus Philadelphia or even here? Has anybody asked that question?
No, not that I'm aware of. I
Okay.
I didn't offer them, but I will tell you I've got a conflict of interest because a large part of the filming was done in a place called Ridgewood on the Brooklyn-Queens border, and it served the purpose of Philadelphia, Ridgewood did, and it served the purpose of Detroit,
Okay.
Ridgewood did, and I was born and into the 6th grade lived in Ridgewood. So and it was one of these, them, and those towns. It probably still is, but back in the 40s, I was born in 42. It was a really poor immigrant kind of community. And it really, I think, did a good job. I mean, I would have chosen Philly myself, but, it's certainly, I'm sure it was a lot cheaper, easier to film it the way they did.
We have time for one more question. Could you one more? I'm going to go. We didn't get a woman yet.
Did anyone from the Hoffa family ever reach out to you?
Reach out to me?
Yeah.
No, but as the book shows, Barbara Crancer, Judge Crancer, which we won't hold against her, reached out to Frank. When I got him out of jail, she wrote him a letter, hand wrote him a letter, begging him to tell what he knows, knowing that he knows. I mean, it was an open secret that he was involved. Nobody knew exactly the truth of what happened, but everybody knew he was involved. And James P. Hoffa, as much as said that Frank did it, in a press conference up here, he was here in Coal Country. I saw the press conference, but I was never able to find it again once I saw it. He was saying, well, Sheeran was in Detroit at the time, and he went on all the reasons why he believed it. It was kind of like Comey's press conference. All the reasons why he believed it, but the punchline was he didn't have one. He didn't say. He just said, it looks good. Then Eric Shawn, the Fox News reporter, went up to him at a different time and went down the list of the suspects, which were written up in something called the Huffex memo by the FBI. There were 9 suspects, and all but one of them was actually involved in the murder, Frank confessed to me. And Eric Shawn went to James P. and said, would your father have gotten into a car in the parking lot of the Marcus Red Fox? Would he have gotten in the car with Sal Bergoglio? No, not at all, ever. Would he have gotten in the car with, and he went down the list. And then he got to Frank Sheeran, and it was the only one on the list that James P. said to Eric, oh yeah, he would definitely have gotten in the car with Frank. Frank was quoted during Jimmy Hoffa's campaign to take back the Union. Frank was quoted as saying, I'll be a Hoffa man till they pat my face with a shovel and steal my cufflinks. I heard you paint houses is the first words that Jimmy Hoffa ever said to Frank Sheeran. It means I heard you kill people. And Sheeran replied, I do my own carpentry work too, which means I bury them. Well, the title of the movie is The Irishman. And so the cover of the book is changing to reflect that, but was keeping the title, I Heard You Paint Houses, for the book. And anyway, is that it?
Thank you, everyone. Again, Charlie, 1,000 thanks for coming out here. We're so lucky to have you. There are books for sale in the lobby. And Charlie, we'll give you a little bit break. If we can have everybody go out and either get your books or get in line, we'll bring Charlie out. We'll let him get a drink of water, maybe a little bit of bite to eat, and we'll be out very shortly into the hallway area.